right, hello everyone, and welcome back to For St. Pete's Sake. It's been a few weeks since I've said this, but we are the official podcast of the Stonewall Democrats of Pinellas County, where we deep dive into everything political in Pinellas County, the state of Florida, and beyond. My name is Christian Hotchkiss. I'm the president and your host, and you're joined by my co-host and vice president, Laura Gerken. Laura, how are you?
Good, Christian. I know it's kind of my fault the reason that we had our little fall hiatus because I was bopping. I basically just spent a week and a half in Orlando because who doesn't want to do that? But yeah, I'm super glad to be back here for the end of the year and to see you again and to do, a little election roundup here opportunities that we've had with our guest.
Absolutely. I don't want to take too much time before we get into it, so I'm going to go right into her introduction. Today on For St. Pete's Sake, we're joined by a powerhouse in Florida politics and a relentless advocate for everyday people, Nikki Fried. From her trailblazing tenure as Florida's Commissioner of Agriculture, where she became the only statewide elected Democrat at the time, to her current role as chair of the Florida Democratic Party, Nikki has built a reputation for speaking truth to power and fighting for issues that shape real lives. Voting rights, economic fairness, clean energy, and a government that actually works for all of its people. Because right now we know that Florida does not. She's a lawyer, a leader, and a bold voice, unafraid to challenge the status quo. And today she's here to break down what's happening in Florida, what's at stake, and why this moment matters. Madam Chair, welcome to For St. Pete's Sake.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm so excited for this conversation. And again, thanks for doing all of this stuff. And this is what it's about. It's about having, real conversations with real people, because that's, people are so sick and tired of politics and being able to just talk and hang out and know that those of us involved in politics, some of us are real. They can, take off the jackets and we're still human beings. And so glad to be here today.
Absolutely. That's one of the things I really love about this, what we do here is as we've told you, we don't come up with pre-written questions. We don't send anything out. We really like to keep it as conversational and as intimate and real as possible. So I when we have the guests on, they don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what they're going to say. It's all genuine and it's all real. So thank you again for being here. And thank you to your team for being so great and coordinating this, because they've been awesome. Just absolutely amazing. So thank them as well.
Of course, we're trying to build a new party. We're trying to build a party which is responsive to the people that are continuously showing up. And so we certainly are trying to do this differently and make people proud and want to be Florida Democrats. So we're trying to do it differently. So thank you. I'll let them know.
Yeah. And speaking of doing things differently, for those who may not know, we had some election results here in Florida, mainly out of Miami, the city of Miami. We have a new mayor, a Democrat mayor in Miami, a female Latino Democrat mayor in Miami. What? Oh my gosh, tell us about that. It's so exciting.
So exciting. And for those who don't know, I'm a Miami girl through and through. And while I haven't lived in Miami since I graduated from college, but parents were born in Miami. I was born in Miami. So making sure that Miami stays blue, but more importantly, has good policies to take care of the people in Miami. And we've just seen so much damn corruption. I still remember the stories growing up about the corruption in the city of Miami and Miami-Dade County and all that stuff. And so we had a fantastic candidate. We had, a primary, which for those who don't always know is local government most of the time is nonpartisan. And so there were 13 people in this race in November. 13 people. There was a handful of Democrats and a whole lot of crappy Republicans. And Eileen Higgins came out of that primary with 38%, which is tremendous. And the Republican that came out was Emilio Gonzalez, who had been the city manager for Jimenez, who's now unfortunately a congressman down in Miami. And so she ran a fantastic race. But more importantly, I've known her for so many years, and she really is genuine. She's comes off as somebody you can talk to and have real conversation with. She shows up for the people. She has real solutions to problems. As a county commissioner, she really kind of like got shit done. Like I was constantly like hearing from her about Key Biscayne this and environmental this, and so when she decided to run, obviously the party couldn't be involved because the fact that she had a primary, but we did a lot of work on the ground. We have a fantastic new local chair down in Miami-Dade County, Laura Kelly, who ran for the House last year, and she lost her race and decided, like I did in 2022, like if we got to fix this shit, and the only way to fix it is sometimes to roll up your sleeves and immerse yourself in the problem, and that's what she did. And so Laura has been really reforming the party down in Miami-Dade and has done a lot of work. And so Eileen had the benefit of a lot of the grassroots stuff and being a great candidate and doing the work to build a coalition of Democrats, of independents, even some Republicans that were really coming out in full swing for her. And we have not won that seat in almost 30 years. Like unbelievable considering that we've had a voter registration advantage, but that shows you that we've screwed up down there. You know, we haven't been doing the year-round organizing. We haven't been showing up. We've just been saying the same things, just a different like, candidate with the same talking points. And I think that we were able to crack the code. Eileen worked really hard. Her team was on the ground, had a lot of coalitions that came down and was knocking on doors. And so we saw at the election results, 19-point win. Like unfreaking believable. 19
Unheard
points.
of.
Huge. And it just wasn't the city. Like, so to show it wasn't just like what the Republicans want to say, like, oh, it's that blue city. Well, screw that.
Mhm.
Like 19 points is not like they just won the
Right.
seat
That's not
70
easy.
points in the last time
Right.
around. So don't tell me that. And then in Miami Beach, we also it was a blue seat in Miami Beach, but there was a runoff, and we won by 40 points. 4-0.
What?
That seat is not a
Crazy.
point swing seat. Like that's not a 40-point swing. But that
Yeah.
last night, on the election results was 40 points. And that was again, proof of concept, good candidates, hard working on the ground, showing up in all parts of our communities. And that's what produced the results. And the fact that, I don't know, we got a little affordability crisis in our state, got 30 years of one
Oh,
party
that's a hoax made
rule.
up by us Democrats. What do you mean?
Yeah, it's a hoax.
Right.
Big deal.
It's a hoax.
And Trump is, of course, giving us gifts every single day.
Yeah.
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 Absolutely. I kind of want to dig into the deep stuff for just a second. Speaking of great candidates, we're already seeing a lot of fantastic candidates from around the state. In Hillsborough, in Pinellas, over in Orlando. We've got a lot of great candidates already stepping up and getting into these races early, which I think is really important. What's the game plan for the state party, and how do the local organizations like Stonewall work with you to support these candidates early on, get them off the ground immediately?
Yep.
Because like you said, we do have to start this work now. We can't just 3 months before the election, like we have been in the past, stepping out and saying, oh, hey, it's
Election time.
October, but we got an election in November. So, talk to us about that.
So I agree, and there's two things that when I came in as chair, I needed to fix. The first was as a past candidate, I always was hearing, when I ran first in 2018, don't count on the party. The party's not going to be there for you. You're going to have your own campaign. The party is just kind of like a side thing. Typically makes your life more difficult. Party's not there. I wanted to make sure that we did that differently, that we made sure that every candidate felt seen, felt heard, felt supported, even if it couldn't be financial support, at least have a program in place where we are answering questions, we're providing. So we did. So that was one step. What we first did in 23 and 24 is we built a candidate campaign program that is phenomenal. So anybody who wants to run for office, which I certainly encourage anybody who's listening to this pod to consider running for office, from soil and water districts all the way up to Congress and U.S. Senate and all the statewide. So we created a program that really has invested a lot of time and resources. That a candidate, once they fill out the FTPs, run for something form, you get automatic information from the party. You get contacted by our candidate campaigns director, Danielle Hawk, who is also a past candidate in 2022. So she also knows what it felt like to not have the support from the party and wanted to
Hmm.
fix that. Inside of our portal, we have everything from position papers to resume banks to deadlines to forms, basically anything that you would need, basically a campaign in a box, and be
Hmm.
able to be there to help the candidates walk through this process. The other thing that was really, really important is what you were just saying, Christian, is like people have been saying to us for how long? Where have you been for 2 years? You asked for my vote. You got my vote, and then I don't see you for 2 years. Now you're asking for my vote again. What have you done for me? And we really wanted to fix that, and we wanted to show up year round in our communities. And so we launched the beginning part of this year what we're calling the Pendulum Project, which is a year-round statewide organizing model, kind of being a little bit going off to we're going to be state number 4. Michigan, Wisconsin, and North Carolina have all kind of gone into these year-round organizing, and what do they all have? Democratic governors,
Hmm.
all coming from
Absolutely.
what was traditionally red states, and we're able to kind of move the needle and flip their states. And so we launched that this year. And now we have a statewide field program. We are leaning in, we are training our clubs and our caucuses and our DECs how to do the year round organizing, everything from a statewide field director who comes in and trains everybody, statewide voter registration director who comes in and trains everybody. And this is our opportunity with our DECs and our clubs and our caucuses when we have candidates that our clubs and caucuses and our DECs knows how to support them, knows how to do the work, how to launch these canvases, how to do phone banking, how to make sure that they're being invited into spaces. Because at the end of the day, a vast majority of our candidates are not going to have real financial resources. Like that's just, it's not just Florida.
Right.
Like that's just the name of the game. It's
Yeah.
it's expensive to run for office, no matter where you are in this country. And
Hmm.
you're never going to have enough resources. But what do we have? We have people. And so we know that filling seats and from up and down the ballot needs volunteers. And so we really are trying to make sure that we are grassroots oriented and are leaning in. So right now we've got fantastic candidates and encouraging them all to make sure we have a list again when these candidates apply. Through our Run for Something platform, they also get a checklist. Have you checked in with your DEC? Have you checked in with the local clubs and caucuses? Do you know who the leaders are in your Black churches? Do you know who your leaders are in your business community? Go find them out if you don't.
Hmm.
That has to be some of the conversations that we have with our candidates. And this way we're building that infrastructure and building, that community amongst our candidates and our grassroots organizers that can support the campaigns. And that's how we won. And that's how we look what
Yeah.
happened. And this also, we didn't talk, we went to Miami, but there was a special election also in Senate District 11, which is not too far from you all. As part of
Yeah.
Pasco and Sumter and Hernando and Citrus. And they didn't have a lot of financial resources, but they had people who were knocking on doors, who were making phone calls. And while we didn't win the seat, it was a shift 22 points to the left. And some of the more red parts of our state,
Yeah.
Hernando
Where
County, where our
where I
current
live.
CFO and you live, moved 31 points.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's because of the work that was being done on the ground leading up to these elections. And so we're really excited about this model and hope it will sustain itself way past my time as chair, because this is the model that works.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the things that you mentioned about Eileen, that one in Miami, and that what we've seen from Mickey Sherrill in New Jersey, and Abigail Spanberger in Virginia, and Zohan Mamdani in New York is authenticity.
Hmm.
They're obviously not all the same candidate, because they're representing all vastly different constituencies, but they're all very authentic to their whatever office that they're seeking to find. So how has that been in finding your candidates to run? Is it like, I mean, I don't know, it can't be pretty easy to find people to step up and be like, yes, let me go
Ruined my life.
get and be in the local or worse national spotlight.
It's so funny, Laura, that you said that, because that is the word that I have used all year. Like literally all year. When candidates call me and say, what is some best advice for me for, and or I'm on interviews and they say, is your party left or is it moderate? And I said, stop asking that question. Like, that is not the question to be asked anymore. The question is, are you showing up for your constituents? Are you ready to fight
Mhm.
for your people? And are you authentic and real? Like, people want
Mhm.
genuine. They want to know again that when you see them in the food store, that first of all they're going to the food store, and
Mhm.
that
Right.
that they're going to the food store, that they're going to have conversations, that they're going to have sometimes bad days, and
Mhm.
that that's part of life, and that we all come to these events and we all come to this space having a personal life, having family that we all don't always agree with. And that uncle that sits at the Thanksgiving table that you're like, "Oh God, why did he come this year?" And we all
Right.
have that. And I think that what we saw, to your point, Laura, in all three of those candidates, and Eileen, and even Gay Valamont up in the Congressional
Mhm.
District 1 earlier part of this year, people just showed up and said, "Look, the system's broken. This shit's not
Mhm.
working for me. This shit's not working for you. Let's fix this together." And I really think that is the moment. And I say this too in a comparison when people are like, "Oh, Trump and Mandami and they're so," and I said, but it's the same message. It is the same message. Like, obviously we are not Trump supporters and we read through his bullshit, but at the end of the day, people felt that he was authentic. He was ready
Mhm.
to talk truth
Mhm.
to power, and he did. And again, it's not for good, and it's own for his own good and not for the good of the people. But people really saw, what Trump was doing, especially in 2016, is that he was calling out, you know, which is so funny now, calling up the corruption in DC, and it's like, wait a second, you know,
Meanwhile, here we are in
the
the Lord's year of
w
2025.
right, that we're
Right.
gonna drain the swamp. Like, "Sir, you are the swamp." Like, what?
Literally.
But people bought it because they felt that he was speaking, good, bad, or indifferent, but truth, and same thing with Mandami, that people were ready to
Mhm.
show up and be that authenticity, and, you're sometimes gonna say things that you didn't mean, and sometimes your things are gonna come out of your mouth, and you're gonna like, "You know what? I messed up, I'm sorry." And
Yeah.
people looking for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that I think, that's gonna be, we're gonna continue to see more as people, as we age into the world of everybody has past tweets or, past Facebook posts or, has anyone gotten canceled on a MySpace post yet?
Mhm.
Like, I don't know, that one, where we all just like emo and friendly on MySpace. Anyway, but like,
Now we're
I
aging
think
ourselves.
that,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
I think that is part of it is that like because I don't remember there was a guy in I think in Maine and like his tweets
US
have
yeah,
gone like
yeah,
yeah
US
off the rails but it's like there is have to his point of like I was in a bad online space at that time. I don't believe those things now. I don't think I believed them then, but I was in a sick headspace. Where do we think we are with that conversation of, because we are supposed to be the big tent party. And so, like I know we've had David Jolly on the podcast, and some people have certain feelings about, him being one of the um candidates for nomination for our party seeing as he like your prior opponent in the governor's race was not originally a Democrat but I think we see that with the amount of NPAs that we have in the state and whatnot like that we need to build the bigger tent. So how do you see that how do you see that big tent working out in Florida?
It's been a problem in some respects, and I think that we're getting a little bit better, but we've had this purity test that you have to agree if we're going to be a big tent, you can't also piss inside the tent. You have
Mhm.
to know like, okay, not everybody's going to agree with us 100% on all of our issues. And you know what? That's okay. That makes them human. That makes them real
Definitely.
and that they're willing to say, look, I'm not with you on abortion. I'm not with you on, some cannabis, which I don't understand that one, but like, but sure, there's people out there that may not agree with cannabis and
Yeah.
legalization, but we have to accept. And again, it goes back to what we were just saying, authenticity, and that if you are just saying things, and I would rather a David Jolly come onto this space and not always agree with you. I'd rather him do that and say, look, I'm not with you on XYZ issue, or I'm not with you on this. You'd at least know where he's coming from, and you know that it's genuine. You don't want somebody coming on here and just placating to placate. That
Mhm.
makes it, because then you're going to be disappointed when they're in office, when they're not doing what you thought they were going to do, and then you have bad blood. But I think that we've had tough times in Florida, and it's not just Florida, it's across the country, on these unrealistic expectations. And I always yelled about it too, on all of inside the party, all the questionnaires that all of the candidates have to fill out in every election. And we box our candidates into a hole and say, well, if you don't say 100% you agree with us on every one of these things, we're not endorsing you. And so the candidate says 100% of things and they get the endorsement. And then in the general election, they back away. And then instead, we should understand that you want people to be truthful in what they believe, and come out and support things that they feel like they can fight for, or support. I think we're getting better because everybody understands, look, at the end of the day, we have to win. Like, we have to win. That,
Yeah.
Democrats have been so wrapped up in being right, and having to be right than to win. And I think that we
Mhm.
have to be in a place where we have to start winning, because we can't protect our communities. We can't get good policies through if we're just saying, well, they weren't with us on this issue. Well, yeah, but now they're lost. And now we can't even fight for that issue or anything else because they're not in office, because you were holding, because you refused to hold your nose and to vote for Hillary Clinton, or
Or
Kamala
yeah.
Harris, or whatever the issue is. Well, look where we are. And
Yeah.
and I think that people are starting to understand, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and that you got to sometimes accept people's flaws. You have to, if that you believe it's a flaw, or accept that not everybody's going to agree 100% on every issue, and that is okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the most right and correct all the time people in this United States is Ketanji Brown Jackson, but she's in the most minority position as there is. So it's like we can agree with her forever, which I generally do on her decisions, but especially the way she words them. But like it doesn't, unfortunately, those are, for law schools and history bucks to talk about. They're not setting the laws right now.
That's
So
right. Well, first of all, just shout out to Katanji, as also we went to the same high school. She's a little older than
Oh.
I am, but we were at the same high school. We went to the same high school, which is also where Jeff Bezos went to school. So there's a couple of us that are coming from Miami Palmetto, and she also did speech and debate. Had the same debate coach that I had. Uh,
I
so
love it.
so she's fantastic, and I'm so excited that she is where she is, and standing up for all of our rights.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, let's dive into the Congress of it all. So we know that Congress right now is a shit show,
Shit show.
just to say it plainly.
Shit show.
Um, we recently saw MTG, the great Marjorie Taylor Greene, come out and say that she's going to resign on January 6th, a year before her run is over, 10 years over. And I've recently heard that up to 20 more members of the Republican Party could be stepping down and resigning before their term ends. So
We
it's
can
not
only
very
be so
popular.
lucky.
Right. We could only be so
Right.
lucky to get it before 2026, because we got a good chance of winning. Here's the thing. If we don't win the House back at least in 2026, we need to completely start over. Um, so what do you feel is going on? What's the vibe that you're getting from Congress and currently, and how you see it going for in the future?
Yeah, I think that, whether Marjorie's, did it authentically, and that was from a good place. I don't know. I don't know her well enough, or well at all, to
Mm.
know if it was genuine what she was doing, or was political gain at some point. I don't know. I'm not going to speculate on that. But I think a couple things are happening. I think that, they all gave everything they had to Donald Trump. And they thought that he was going to be transparent on the Epstein files, and they were going to fix on affordability and no more wars and all these things that became the MAGA brand. And
Mhm.
they're seeing and they're watching it completely fall apart in front of their eyes. And that he's been lying to them on the unaffordability issue, that he's never fixing that. That, we're seeing what's happening in Venezuela. I just saw earlier, they just confiscated an oil oil rig off of the
Yep.
Venezuelan coast. Like, how does that
Yeah.
have anything to do with drugs coming into our country? That they're just seeing through what the grift is here on Venezuela, and they're seeing, not being willing to go support healthcare access with the ACAs, and they're hearing from their constituents. And a lot of these Republican areas are rural, are working class, that don't have high economic or high educational constituents, and so they're seeing that their people are going to hurt, and they're going to hurt in a real way, and they're hearing from their constituents, and they just aren't buying what Donald Trump is selling. And so more power to them for stepping up. Certain other people like Nancy Mace is going to resign so she can run for governor, so that's not really like, like she anyhow, I'll keep my mouth shut on that
Right.
one.
Yeah. Yeah.
um but I think that there's something that's really happening, and I think that Speaker Johnson has lost control of his caucus, and I think that there is a real power vacuum going on there. And look, at the end of the day, being an elected officer is hard. It is. It's being away from your family. It's being away from your friends. Your job, your social circles, your just way of life, and you're traveling back and forth. Whether my job here, traveling the whole state, or if you're going back and forth to DC, and if you're just going up there to push a button, or know that you're not going to get anything accomplished, at some point you're like, what am I doing here? And I
Yeah.
think that you're seeing a lot of that starting to unfold on the Republican side. You're also seeing Trump underwater, that they may have a hard time getting reelected. So some of it's self-serving of getting out of the current, so they're not losing an
Mhm.
election. So I think that some of that is happening, and it's now becomes popular. It's popular to leave, and so I think that there's kind of this trend that is happening in this conversation, and we'll see. It would be also fantastically amazing if that all happened and we got a speaker, Jeffries, before the actual midterms. And I also think that they're seeing too, with this redistricting fight that's happening across the country, that unfortunately we're going to see here in Florida, that people are waking up to the corruption, and they're seeing that this was not done for the best interest of the people, but trying to protect the Trump, agenda. And people are seeing through it. That they want people to take care of them, not Trump. And I think that they're seeing that they may lose their election. Some still have some integrity. Some.
Yep.
I said some, you know, uh,
Mhm.
and they're just saying enough is enough. When you're starting to see illegal orders being given to the military, I saw earlier that Trump is now asking for immunity from the ICC, the International Court. Like, why would they give us immunity? Like, it's so
Wow.
Why do we need it?
mind-boggling what is happening. The deception of the boat attacks and the Epstein files, and just the deals that are happening across the country, across the world, that we're going to be, Russia's not that bad. Russia's good if we can get their mineral rights, and China's not bad as
Right.
long as we can get the access to the chips. And people are like, what about America first? Whatever happened to that agenda? And so I think that
Yeah.
people are waking up, and I think that there's an opportunity for us to continue to show wins in the midterms, because of all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely we have every opportunity in the world. Like I said, we cannot afford to squander it. So if you're listening, make sure to get out and help in any way that you can. Um, why do you think it's more cool to resign early than for them to just not follow Trump anymore, not follow Trumpism? Are they scared? Are they, what do we think that is?
I guess if you've like made up your mind to like not serve anymore, like when you're leaving a job, when you're like so unhappy with a job, and you decide that you want to quit, like you want out now. Like you don't want to wait 2 months. You give your 2-week notice. Things are awkward. Like
Right.
you're not getting any promotions. You're not getting any more money. You're not getting any more committee assignments. Like people aren't going to talk to you in the press because why? You're not going to be there next term. So, like, why stay any longer? And I think that they want to put a middle finger to Trump. I think that's part of it, is like, Like, you've been disrespectful to this chamber, you've been disrespectful to the power of Congress, and I'm not staying for any of this. And if this means me having to resign early to keep a little bit of my own dignity, so be it. And I think that's what you're kind of starting to see. And especially if people have their own, it's going to sound awful, but if you are in Congress and you have personal wealth and you're not looking at it for a paycheck purposes, you're like,
Mhm.
screw it, I'm out and I don't need to be here anymore. I'd rather go home and enjoy my holidays and not think about this anymore and just be out.
Oh, well, and I think other reason, that it's easier to resign than, resist or, be the opposite or go, vote your conscience do is like it comes with actual physical real life security threats. Like,
That too.
obviously we're, none of us are Marjorie Taylor Greene fans here, but like for her children, I mean, she shouldn't be getting death threats either. It's a little, when you're a public figure, it's like harder to draw that line. But like to go the step and like get her kids involved, even though they're grown, but still like that's wild. And like and that is a whole, whole other political violence issue that needs to be addressed, on a large scale too. But yeah, I just think the personal security aspect of it is a large reason why people don't want to, get on the wrong side because all it takes is a truth or a tweet or whatever, Facebook post, whatever methods they're using now. And you just have, and who knows even, this will come up in our shout out or shutdown little forward teaser, but who knows how much of those engagements are real online, but you just don't know. You have to take them seriously, like, because if you don't, you have Josh Shapiro's, the governor's mansion being fire burned while he was in it, or, the plot to attempt to kidnap, Gretchen Whitmer and whatnot. So it's just,
Yeah,
yeah,
the
I wouldn't want
yeah,
to.
the personal stakes are real. Like, they're
Yeah.
real. I mean, it's something that has been a constant in my life. When I was
Oh, I'm sure.
and as we had detail, I had detail three times, full 24-hour detail for me on three different separate occasions. I had a threat in Broward County, and so anytime that we were traveling to Broward, all of my detail from FDAX knew the picture of the guy who had sent threats out, because you don't know if they're real, and they did in the background, and people are mental health is a real problem in our country that we are refusing to address in any real way. And we also had a threat in central part of our state, and we were crisscrossing into some rural parts that we were a little bit worried about. And after January 6th, I had detail outside of my house for that period of time. And then when I was running for governor, the last 6 weeks of the campaign, I had full detail as well, because things are crazy out here. And certainly as chair,
Mhm.
when we had the assassinations of the Minnesota legislator and her
Mm.
husband and the attacks on the other legislator, it freaked the crap out of my family. I mean, it was the day of no King's parades, and my significant other was in Atlanta with his kids and my stepsons. And, we were far away, and he calls me and he says, "Where are you? I need to know where your physical location is, and you need to get out of the No Kings parade. Like, you are the biggest Democratic face of our state, and you got to get out." And so it's not just like I'm the first person to run into a fire. That has been my entire life. Like, I'm always going to run into a fire, but I also have to remember I have people who love me and are scared for that. My first, I'm a bear. I want to go in and protect, and I want to go in and hold on to everybody and be that front and make sure that I'm protecting everybody else. But it's scary for families, and it's certainly having to explain to my sister and my mom why I continue doing what I'm doing when all this political violence is increasing. But at the end of the day, like, we can't be scared because if we're scared they win, and that's what terrorists do. They scare you, and that's their psychological warfare on you. But we do need to take precautions. My entire staff, I've got new ring cameras all over my house, and so that way I at least know that if somebody's knocking on a door or something's happening or I'm not home, that I'm getting alerts. And it's about looking at your surroundings. But yeah, there's a personal risk involved in some of this stuff. And to your point, like, at some point, if you're crossing Trump and he's putting out your personal address like they did with some of the judges,
Right.
it
Mhm.
becomes dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really scary, and the doxing is wild to me. Uh, in any case, the political violence that we see, um, is just absolutely awful. And we saw what happened with Charlie Kirk. It was disgusting. Same way with the Minnesota lawmaker. It's not good on either side. I will say that just to put it out there, oftentimes comes far more from the right than it does the left, but it's not good from either side. So
Yeah.
the rhetoric has to be toned down, and we just got to it goes back to authenticity. Instead of attacking each other, why are you running? Don't attack somebody. Tell me why you want to run for that chair, for that position.
Yeah.
Even if you're running for dog catcher, why do you want to run for dog catcher? Tell me that. Don't attack the other person just because they don't agree with you or they're on the other side of the aisle. Tell me how you're going to work with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that Trump's rhetoric has really escalated a significant amount, over the last year. That is making it dangerous for Democratic lawmakers and for those of us who are willing to stand up and fight for our people. And it is dangerous out here. And to your point, like, yeah, that's what I tell candidates all the time too. Like, we as Democrats have two jobs to do. One, we have to fight back. Like, we have to be obviously willing to hold them accountable, to say this is not okay. Like, you're breaking the law. You are violating the Constitution. Like, you have to be willing. And I think that we saw that throughout the year. When people kept saying, "Where are the Democrats?" And like, we heard that a
Mhm.
lot. Where are the Democrats? And so we here in Florida, we had here 32, 33 town halls all across the state showing up for the
Mhm.
people because people wanted to know that we were fighting. But on the other hand, we had to make sure that we have solutions to their problems. And so we have a very being out of power, we've got two jobs to do. We have to hold them
Okay.
accountable, but we also have to show up in an authentic way with solutions to problems and not just yelling. I mean, we hear it all the time, it's Florida's become unaffordable and Democrats are screaming about it, but what are the solutions to it? And I get asked that all
Mhm.
the time. People are like, yeah, I hear that. It's a funny story. um, I started doing this past year what we're calling the front porch swing, where I'm going to red and rural parts of our state, just having conversations like this. I'm not wearing any FTP stuff and just having real, honest conversations. And what I'm finding is there's so much more that unites us than divides us. Everybody has the same
Mhm.
issues. And so I was in Clay County, which is really red. Really
Yeah.
red, Clay County.
Yeah.
But we were going to a rancher. Well, he was a rancher farmer, owned a lot of it was property and fifth generation. And as we're going down the dirt road to get to his place, and we were going horseback riding, and he rescues horses. And we used to ride back
Aw.
in the day. And so as we're going down the dirt road, one side is Trump flag, the other side is Confederate flag, and
Okay.
so I get onto the property, and he comes out of his place, and he says, "First of all, I wasn't going to allow you onto my property first, and to come and have this conversation, but then I remembered you fought for my marijuana and my guns rights, and so again, the things that unite us, and we found
Yep.
that common ground, and he invited a whole bunch of people from his community to come ride with us, and at the end of the ride." Not only did he come off the horse and say, "Listen, I just want to let you know, no one has ever asked me how I am. No one's ever come out here and said, what's on your mind? How are you doing? How can I help?" And then he said, "You were the first. Democrat, Republican, you were the first." And then one of the other guys said, who was, I think he was an insurance broker or somewhere in the real estate arena. And we were still talking about property insurance. And I'm going through and I said all my statistics of how much property insurance has increased since Ron DeSantis became governor and what's happening here and why we're where we are and the blank checks to the property insurance companies. He's like, "Yeah, I hear all that. So do you have a solution?" And I was like, "Actually." And I rattled off all the things that I did as commissioner to do this, and this. This would lower the premiums. This would get this and this. And he kind of sat back and was like, "So you do have solutions?" I said, "Yeah, just give us the power, and we will certainly fight
Right.
for it and get it fixed." But I think that that's where a lot of our Democratic candidates have gotten into a little bit of a hole, is that they know the issues that they have to fight for, but don't necessarily know the policy solutions. And we're getting ourselves into a time when these damn cell phones, you can find out everything you need to know, and there's people more in tuned with what's happening than you would have said maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago. And so
Yeah,
people are looking for individuals that are going to show up in spaces with real solutions to problems and not just political speak.
absolutely.
Precisely.
Absolutely. How do you,
Precisely.
is there something that with the FDP for new candidates who may not have the answers on how to fix the issues, but know that they are issues? What do you guys have in place? I know you said you were doing the candidate support system. Is that part of it?
Yep.
Are you training the candidates and things like that?
We are. So we got policy positions inside of this candidate portal. We also have, all the candidates know that they can reach out, not always directly to me at the first take, but certainly to the team. And then, they will do the first conversation. And then if it's a policy conversation, they maybe, will send them over to me. But we also do monthly. As we get closer, is more frequent. All candidate calls, where we have guest speakers that come on to educate individuals on different, on specific issues,
Oh, cool.
like unions. Like if you're not coming from a union family or union background, like you may not understand how important unions are and
Hmm.
why they're there and what the accomplishments have been of unions across the country for 50 plus years.
Hmm.
And so it's
Yeah.
important to know what the background is, what the Republicans have been doing to our unions in our state. And so we bring on union leaders to talk about their unions and the issues. The education system is very complicated now. When we were all
Hmm.
growing up down here, and I was one of Miami Palmetto High, we had private schools and we had public schools. And like, yeah, I understood the
Right.
difference. And that was that. Now you got schools of hope and choice and vouchers and all these things and new laws and regulations and book banning and the laws inside the classrooms on the don't say gay stuff and like there's just a
Yeah.
lot. There's a
Hmm.
lot. The higher education stuff and the DEI and tenure. There's just
Hmm.
a lot on education and that is my background, coming from education. I have a minor in education, but also student body president at the University of Florida. I still sit on the University of Florida Law School trustees. So like education, I was student body president, like all that good stuff. So like I know education, but if you my mom was a teacher, but if you don't have that background, this is a
Right.
lot. This is overwhelming. And so we bring on, FEA, Florida, our teachers unions and making sure that people can ask questions, understand, the tip, the democratic position on things, which again, as part of our part of the conversation, not everybody agrees on all of it. That
Right.
and that's okay too. You're talking about David Jolly. David has, a little bit of a nuanced position on public education, as opposed to our minority leader in the House, Fences Driscoll. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. Where you can have two separate policy positions, but at the end of the day, we got to fund our public education and we got to fund our
Hmm.
teachers and we got to make sure that kids have a quality education and that people can have access to our higher education system if they so choose to utilize it. And that we can't have, some of the craziness that's happening in our higher ed and what they're doing to our universities and DeSantis coming in and wiping out our university
Yeah.
presidents to put in all of his friends who are making so much money.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, look what happened at New College. I mean, Richard Corcoran is
Yeah.
making so much money per pupil and has destroyed the university.
Hmm.
So it's but yes, so to answer a very long-winded way of answering, yes, we do our best to make sure that we are giving all that policy support for our candidates.
I think another real issue that I want to touch on just for people who listening who may want to run for office. It's not easy, but it's not cheap either. Especially if you're running on a local level or as for a state house or state senate or anything like that. You got to have campaign funds, but unless you have money in the bank, you're not able to spend the time campaigning and getting out and meeting people. So you're having to work these jobs. And then even once you're in that position, once you get elected to the state house, state senate, you're only paid less than $30,000 a year as your salary, and it's very hard to maintain any sort of actual life as
Yeah.
an elected official. So, what I know that that's an issue from speaking to people that say they want to run, but they just can't afford to. How do we combat that? Is there anything that we can do besides getting the law changed and increasing the wage once they get into office?
It's I have this conversation a lot too. And look, and I had to have that conversation when I ran in 2018. In 2018
Mhm.
I ran, I'm not independently wealthy. I work really, really hard as an attorney. And at the time I had my own firm and I had my own clients. But I was running for office. I couldn't lobby for them when I'm running for office, and certainly can't serve them while I'm running for office, and had to have those conversations with and luckily I had a client who was willing to say, listen, stay on the books, we'll continue to pay you. But if he had not done that, I may not have been able to run, because I would have had no income. That was my
Yeah.
income, was my my lobbying shop. And so it is definitely something that we have a very big disadvantage because we have been out of power for 30 years, where the Republicans could put people into bullshit jobs to get paid, so they can do the work, and it's no big deal. And law firms, hiring on somebody just for the sake of them being on the firm and not really actually working. And we don't have those luxuries of having big corporations that are willing to put somebody on the books so that they can run for office and make the company look good or whatnot. And but this is something that it's not just here in Florida. This is across the country situation, and that Democrats have this problem that we've got to figure out and fix. I don't have the answers to that quite yet. And every situation is a little bit different, and certainly trying to figure out how, if somebody's a teacher and they can't work half the year. I,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that that's hard. It's hard to say I'm taking off 2 months of a year to go up to Tallahassee, and then you got committee weeks beforehand, when
Right.
you are trying to teach, or if you're in a law firm, we're talking to your law firm, being willing to keep you on, and knowing that you're not going to do billable hours and you're not going to do all those things while you're up in session, which also makes the people who will run for office for the legislature, especially, the Republicans, are not
Mhm.
are not in touch with the people because they're not having the
Mhm.
same working class issues that we're talking about, and so it makes a very big divide in the caliber of people, and the diversity of the types of professions and backgrounds of people that are serving. If you are a police officer or a firefighter, it makes it
Oh,
much
yeah.
difficult for you to be able to run for
Mhm.
office, and we would love all those. But we are seeing a lot of veterans that have stepped up to the plate to continue to serve, and that is fantastic because they have that same service. But it is a problem, and I wish that I had a magic wand to figure out the solution to it. But know that if that is something that is on any of you, anybody who's listening, and that's a problem for you, talk to us. We can see what, where we can help and give advice. But it is definitely a problem. Which is somewhat unique to Florida because we are a part-time legislature, and because you're only getting paid less
Yeah.
than $30,000 a year to do your job, and get very little. You get reimbursement for obviously your travel expenses, but you're not getting necessarily reimbursed. What if you have families and children? And what if you're a single
Right.
mom or a single dad, and you're raising your
Right.
kids? It's being in politics is not easy. There's a lot of personal sacrifices that come with
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all the questions I had. How about you, Christian? You good? You ready to hop into our next segment?
I'm good with that. I appreciate everything that was said, and it's been a good conversation. I think there's always
Yeah.
going to be more questions and more talk that we could have. I think we could sit here for six and a
Hours.
half hours and have a
Forever.
conversation. So,
Yeah.
but I know that we can't. So I think that's a great time for us to kind of move into our last segment.
Yep. So that is, of course, for those of you who may have forgotten, our shout out or shut down segment. That's when you take a topic, a news story, a person, anything that's top of mind here that is something positive. You want to get it shout out, put some shine on it, let everybody know. Or if you want to be a little petty and do a shutdown, talk about something that's not so great, and you want to put a little sprinkle on it and let everybody know why it's not so great. That's what we're doing here. So. I have a I don't know. I guess mine's kind of a shutdown. So, does anybody who do we try to sandwich them and stack them a little bit.
I can do both. I got shout out
Let's
and
Okay.
shut down, so you put me where you need.
all right. Well, let's go ahead with you first because I got to shut down. So
Okay.
All right, so I've got a couple of shout outs, but hearing from your
let's
rules,
hear
this
them.
kind of sounds like one and one, but um,
No, let's hear them. I want to
No,
all.
go ahead.
so my first shout out is actually to our Democratic DECs. In that were in this SD11 election. So big shout out to my chairs there that really understood the assignment. They knew it was going to be a very hard race to overcome, but seeing again 31-point swings in Hernando. So shout out to Brian Stewart over there as the chair of Hernando. Bob Burke, who's over at Sumter, who also, really worked very hard to make sure that the DECs had what they needed to turn out the vote. 22-point swing for the overall seat does not happen lightly. And a shout out to my Miami-Dade DEC chair, Laura Kelly, because she really has turned around Miami-Dade, and you feel the energy. I was at the watch party, and you just feel the energy, the excitement, the collaboration, so big shout outs to my DEC chairs.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, I'll go next. Okay,
All
so
right.
mine is like kind of a shout out, shut down. There was a really good Rolling Stone article that came out yesterday, and bear with me because it does start with about Taylor Swift, but this is not about Taylor Swift. So,
She and I share a
um,
birthday,
oh my gosh,
which
December
that's
13th.
right.
I was gonna say
Oh,
coming right
happy
up.
early birthday.
Thank you.
But Miss Swift put out her 13th album, The Life of a Showgirl, and that had some interesting political and online discourse about it. Mainly there were some mainly it became of that like it got twirled into that she's putting out trad wife content, that her and Travis are MAGA, and then it really culminated with a necklace that she put out having lightning bolts on it, and then everyone saying that that's her going full schmatzy and putting the SS symbol on her merchandise. And I was like, we need to calm down and touch some grass, I think. Like, I'm not sure this is real. And so that is my shut down part of it, is like everybody getting so riled up in that. My shout out is to the Rolling Stone article that I mentioned. They put out that was bot farm driven. Bot farm driven. There were like 3.7% of the accounts talking about that were like putting out the majority of the content. And I bring this up here just because we are going into the midterms. We are going to start seeing so much more political advertising and whatnot. And we just need, especially, this is going to be our first election with full unregulated AI, to where it is we just all need to put a critical eye towards things, towards images, towards stories, towards tweets, towards TikToks, and say, if this sounds a little wackadoo, it might be a little wackadoo. And then go touch some grass.
Love that.
That's fair. That's fair. All right. I think I'm going to change mine from a shutdown to a shout out. I think
Okay.
I kind of decided there. So I want to shout out all the current candidates stepping up to run for office, and anybody who's even thinking about it. It's such a difficult choice to make. And like we've talked about at length in this episode, there are so many factors that go into it. But if you are out there and you're in any sort of way seeing that this just isn't working and you genuinely want to help people, please get involved. Please run for something. Run for something. Again, even if it's dog catcher, whatever it is, up and down ballot, we need people to run. We need young people to run. We need diverse people to run. We need more representation across the board. So I'm going to shout out all the candidates that we currently have and anybody who's getting into the races and anybody who's thinking about it. Because again, it's not an easy conversation to have when you're even just talking about running for office. So
That's
I
right.
want to shout that out.
And I'm gonna do a little shutdown.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Shutdown. People have given up on Florida. You know,
Yeah.
oh,
Yes.
people
Yeah.
gave up on Florida, and that Florida is, lost. That ain't the case.
Not yet.
No, we're
No.
out there. People are fighting back. We are certainly in the trenches every single day. We got good Democrats that are standing up for our shared values. So for anybody who has any doubt that Florida is worth fighting for, we're going to shut that down and continue to show up and prove them all wrong every single day, especially those across the rest of the country that said, "Oh, Florida's continue to break my heart." I said, "I understand. I think the heart doesn't break the same way, and it doesn't break even, and I understand that. But also in the same respect, we're going to make your heart filled with hope and optimism, and inspire the nation to understand that you love an underdog, and we're going
Hmm.
to prove it in
Yeah.
these elections coming up."
Absolutely. We got a big
Awesome.
fight ahead of us, but I think we got a good chance. We got a good chance. So thank you so much for joining us
Of
for this
course.
episode. Again, thank your staff and your team for us because they have been absolutely amazing. You've been incredible. I would love to have you back anytime
Yeah,
you want. I will
absolutely.
absolutely be in contact to set that up because I've loved everything about this. So thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who's listened. It's been great. It's been an episode, our welcome back episode after a few weeks off. So
Well,
Yeah.
and
and
thank
we
you for
couldn't
what
have had a better guest.
and thank you for what you all are doing, because listen, people with just the fragmented media right now, people are
Yeah.
looking for other ways to hear information, to hear conversation, to form community, and podcasts like this, and ones that are popping up in our ecosystem is how we're going to also get out of this mess. So
Absolutely.
thank you for what you all are doing. So shout out to you all, because
Thank
it
you.
Aw,
really it takes a
thanks.
lot to put these things together and show up all the time for your community. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nikki. Yeah, and please remember everybody to like us and follow us. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. We're at For St. Pete's Sake. You can subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to your pods. And if you want to leave us a rate and review to help promote us on the algorithm, that would be amazing. We'll be back next week with more stories from the people doing hard work to make our community better. Until next time, for St. Pete's sake, keep pushing for change.